Everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric, and we're continuing series on the MiSter FPGA DE10 Nano project, and we're back with even more Sega Saturn core testing because you guys love these videos. You keep giving me recommendations, and I keep making them so long as you keep watching them, and we got a whole new batch of games to test this week. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But without any further ado, let's get into this week's set of Saturn testing games. And as usual, this is on the most recent core as of recording this. If you don't have that core, head over to the official MiSter Discord, and you'll find it in the Unstable Nightly's build. And starting off at the top, we're going to be talking about Super Tempo, because it's an awesome, colorful game with great music and great gameplay. And the good thing is, at least for the intro here, you can tell that it's working perfectly fine. But let's get into some gameplay. And this is just working really well. Every once in a while you might hear a little bit of a crackle or a pop in the audio, but it is rare. You definitely could listen to this and not have a bad time. But as far as the graphics are concerned, I did not see a single visual glitch in my capture of this. Now do keep in mind, I am not intimately familiar with every single game I test, so maybe there's some little tiny thing going on that a super huge fan of Super Tempo would see. And if you do see it, leave me that comment down below. But the controls are basically lag free. It's playing how I remember this game playing, which is weird and fun at the same time. Tempo is such an odd game, but I really do love it, and it looks great on the current Saturn core from Srg320. All of the colors are vibrant, everything is drawing well. It's what I would expect when I see this game, and I don't know what this little jubbly guy on the ground is. I'm going to call him Bob, but Bob here is moving around the screen like you would expect him to, and that's all we can really ask for. So if you're looking for a good platformer to play on the current core, I would definitely check out Super Tempo. Even the boss battles are so weird, they're so quirky, they're so colorful. You're never quite sure what you're going to see next in this game, but if you're playing it on the current Saturn core, you're going to see something good. Now, one game I wanted to test that absolutely nobody asked me for is Shinri. Why did you not ask for this, guys? Come on, this is an absolute banger. Now, it's got a much longer Japanese title, but my pronunciation of Japanese is garbage level bad, so we're going to call it Shinri, and we're going to move on to the gameplay. Now, this is a stupid rare Sega Saturn game in North America, and if you actually want to buy a copy, you're talking about mortgage payment levels of expensive. I wouldn't pay that for the game. It is quite fun, but I don't think it's worth it. But the great part is, when I'm playing it on MiSter with the current Saturn core, it is just working really well. You can 100% play this game, enjoy it, everything seems to be working perfectly fine. The gameplay, the sound effects, the soundtrack, all of the controls feel lag-free. You're getting the full experience, including that 2D, 3D kind of shifting. I do not see any graphical glitches in this game, and you even get those really nice pseudo-reflections on the ground when you are walking around. It's a ton of fun. It's a strange game, it's an odd game, but it's a very intriguing game, and it's one that most Saturn players know exists, but if you don't have an optical disc emulator, odds are you probably haven't played it unless it was via emulation. But here on MiSter, it is just working so well, and that's absolutely spectacular. And that's a lot of what I'm excited about for this core. A lot of people are going to learn about the Saturn for the first time, and a lot of casual Saturn fans are going to be able to go through the Saturn library and look at some of those rare, expensive deep cuts that they should be playing. And that's the great part about MiSter in general. It allows you to experience new things. And if you want to play this game today on the current build of the Saturn core from Srg320, you just can. I played through the third level. I had absolutely no glitches, no freezes, nothing whatsoever except a good time. And that's all you ever really want when you're playing any video game, is to have a good time. Now, Gunbird, a shooter from Psycho, this also works near to perfect. If there's any issues with it whatsoever, I cannot detect them. And the great part about testing bullet hell shmups is that if there is lag, you don't play as well. You need to have instantaneous reaction times. I am playing this on easy just so I get further in the capture without dealing with dying too much. But there's no lag, and that's what matters. And the sound effects and the soundtrack also sound spectacular, so go ahead and listen to Gunbird for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and show you some more Sega Saturn tests. But enjoy, because it really does sound awesome.
一足遅かったようだね。伝説の魔境はあたしたちトランプがいただくよ。
いただくぜ。いただきまする。
Now, if there is anything there that is not one-to-one perfect, I cannot tell, and I played a lot of Gunbird in my time. But if this is your favorite game of all time and you played absolutely hundreds of hours of it and you see something that I don't, leave me a comment down below, because I am only one set of eyes and I am always curious. But let's take a look at a horizontal shmup now. Parodius. This actually has 2 games on it. It's going to have the original Parodius and Fantastic Journey, and one of the 2 games works perfect, and that's going to be Parodius. Everything is great, the character selection screen works exactly as intended, and when we get in game, this is the Parodius that everyone knows and loves, unless somebody hates it out there. Leave me a comment down below if you don't like it, but I'm assuming I'm not going to get many responses to that question. But again, shmups are a great test, just like fighting games, because input lag will absolutely ruin your experience if there is any. And that is the #1 thing that MiSter does such a great job at, and the current Saturn core isn't having any issues with. And I love all the weird power-ups. We just get this mega horn that basically sends out nonsense text that is a weapon that will instantaneously destroy the enemies in front of you. This game has a massive sense of humor that I absolutely love, and it is a great game, but again, it's not a cheap Sega Saturn game. But the best part here on the current MiSter core, I played through the first half of the game and I saw no issues whatsoever. No glitches, no audio problems, no control problems. It just felt like playing Parodius, which meant that I was just having a good time. But if we go back to the main menu screen and we try the other game on the disc, Fantastic Journey, you are going to find that this one unfortunately does the following. You select the title and then it goes to a black screen and it never recovers again. So only 50% of it is working, but the 50% that's working works spectacularly. Now I want to take a look at ManX TT Superbike as well. I tested this on some previous cores and it was definitely running slower than I would expect, and it had no audio, so I wanted to loop back around to kind of check the progress of some games I've talked about before to see how the core is progressing. And I will say this game definitely seems to run at a faster frame rate that I remember, but there is still no audio in the game, and we'll get out of that vomit-inducing first-person camera. I have never been able to handle that in this one game. But it just feels like playing the game, including all the slightly sloppy D-pad controls. This game, when it came over to Saturn, the controls took some getting used to, but even in arcades, it was not the easiest thing to control. You really had to learn it. But as far as how the 3D is drawing and rendering, this again just looks like the game, including that warping of the texture that makes it look like you're driving on a cylindrical road there and not something that is flat. It's just doing what I would expect, and I always like to mix in 2D and 3D tests in every video because they do use the hardware in different ways, and we want to see how both of those mediums are doing. It's not good enough just to test one, we definitely want to test both at the same time. But we're on a shmup roll here, so let's go over to Terra Diver by Rising. Now I will tell you, like I've told you in previous videos, that sometimes you might think something's not working, but you're not making it work for you, which is to say that some games just require you to hit that start button like it owes you money, like it just said something about your beloved mother. You cannot get into the gameplay in this game, at least in my experience, unless you hammer start until you get into the game. Once you get into the game, you're perfectly fine, but if you don't press start rapidly, it's going to freeze on loading. I don't know why, but this is the reality of a lot of the games on the current Saturn core. Now once you get into the game, it plays amazingly. I had absolutely no audio on it whatsoever, but the whole 3D, 2D combo element is working perfectly fine, and that's why I really wanted to test this game outside of it being an awesome shmup, is that it's using both sprites, 2D backgrounds, and 3D polygons all on the screen at the same time, which means it's using a lot of different features of the silicon in the Saturn to create that image, which means that if nothing was working perfectly, you would 100% be able to tell. So Terra Diver, no audio, plays great. Now a game that I keep wanting to use and play that never works for me is Virtua Cop. I love light gun shooters, and I get the same result on the newest core as I did from previous cores, which is it goes into the now loading and completely stops working, which is unfortunate. Now try Rush Deppy. This game is just weird. It's an awesome game, but it's strange. It's basically Cars the movie before cars ever existed, because you play as anthropomorphic cars, And the female cars have giant headlights. That's just a joke I'm gonna make because that's the reality of it. It's such an absurd platform game, but it's a ton of fun, it's cute, it's colorful, and the gameplay is really actually good once you get past the idea that you're playing as a car that walks on its back tires, and the female cars in the game have giant headlights. You're gonna have a lot of fun, and it's a game that a lot of people asked me to test. I was surprised by that, but I figured if you wanted to see it, I would 100% show it to you. And what I can tell you is that if you want to have a good time as a 2D platforming car, you can't do much better than this game. Just keep in mind it's strange. I do not get where the concept of this came from. Doesn't really matter because it is a good time all around. Now, speaking of cars, wanted to come back to Sega Rally to test as well. It's a new core. It was a very popular Sega Saturn game, so I wanted to see how much better it was doing, because most people, when they come to MiSter and start playing Saturn games, they're going to play the hits, and Sega Rally is one of those hits. It seems like it's running at full speed now. In previous tests, it felt like it may have been not drawing all the frames or running slowly. Here, it plays spectacularly, even if I'm not controlling the car to the best of my ability. It still has barely any audio whatsoever, but you can see this game looks like a Sega Saturn game. If I didn't have audio on in the background, and I just showed you this as a silent still image, I don't know that you would 100% be able to tell it wasn't running on Saturn unless you looked very closely, because there is ever so slightly some graphical corruption at the edges of the screen with certain textures as they go by that aren't in original Saturn hardware. But honestly, we're talking about pixel peeping here, so it is quite possible that you would never even notice in the first place. But let's do a recap of, if you want to play great Sega Saturn games, what you should play today. And starting off is Gunbird. Again, I just cannot see anything in the gameplay of this game that leads me to believe that it's not doing anything but playing one-to-one to real Saturn hardware. The graphics, the sound, the controls, I have absolutely no issues with any of them whatsoever. If you handed me a controller, didn't tell me what I was playing on, I don't think I would be able to tell the difference. Maybe only a Gunbird veteran, someone with a top 10 score in the world, would be able to tell me what it was. Second game is Shinri. It just works. The sound, the gameplay, everything is exactly as it should be, and it's one of those deep cut games that always gets mentioned on lists of most expensive Sega Saturn games. And the great part is, if you want to save some money and help us test, you can play it on the current Sega Saturn core from Srg320 today. And last but not least, Parodius. Again, it's just working. If there's any problems with it whatsoever, I have absolutely no idea, and if you've never played it somehow, definitely play it. It's an awesome horizontal shmup that has an absolutely outstanding sense of humor that'll make you happy the entire time you're playing it. You really can't go wrong with this game or franchise. But that is the current batch of Sega Saturn tests, and there's so many games that are just working at this point in time. But again, if you want to see something I haven't shown yet, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and tell me what game you want to see tested next, and I will give it a shot, because we're getting into deep cut territory here, but that's where I love to live, the obscure and the esoteric. I didn't call this channel Video Game Common for nothing. Short of that, leave me a comment down below, tell me what you think of the current core. I'll be back next week with more MiSter, but short of that, I'm out of time. Bye bye.